Okay, today we're going to learn about a couple tools and a panel or two over on the panel side. We've already talked about how you can adjust these panels so that you can either see the word with the icon, or you can see just the icon, or you could even have multiple panels open. I just really like them like this. I like to be able to see the word. I like to be able to see the icon because I don't necessarily know off the top of my head every time which icon is which. And so it's just easier to have all that information there. As you start to work in Illustrator, you can decide which panels you prefer to have there. If you don't want a panel there, you just take it and exit and it goes away. And I don't really need those. Or if you have a panel, if you would prefer to have a panel that you do not have, you can come over to Window and choose one that's not already there. Let me see what's not already there. I guess we could say pattern options. And then we're going to just stick it right under there with that blue line. And you can see how it merges with the entire list. And again, remember, we've got the ability to make groups where you kind of put them together, or you can pull them apart and they can be separate. And that's indicative of the these little lines right here at the top. Okay, so today we are going to talk about, we're going to review a couple things. We got our arrows here that we've been talking about, and we're going to add in some panels. So we've got our selection arrow tool, which is V with the shortcut is V. We've got our direct selection tool, shortcut A. We've talked about our rectangle tool, shortcut M. If you click and hold under the rectangle tool, you've got rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, flare. We're going to talk about some of those. But I need to point out these little tiny triangles under some, not all, of the tools means that there are additional tools under that tool. So that's why when we're here hovering over rectangle tool, but we hold down and there are 5 more tools underneath just the rectangle tool. So understand that even though this is what you're seeing, this is not all that you have at your disposal. So let's go ahead and talk about rectangle tool. We've opened that. We talked about how to make rectangles the other day. But now let's talk about how to make rounded rectangles. We can do rounded rectangle. We also talked about the fact that if you're on the black or white arrow and you click on it, you've got these live corners here. It kind of looks like eyeballs. So you can round your own corners. This is a slightly different rounding. I guess it's just preferential. And of course, once you have the rounded rectangle, you still get the little eyeballs here that you could round further, and we know red line means we've gone as far as we can. Okay, so and I can push out, I can isolate different sides with the A, and we can kind of push that out and do different things there. Now let's go back to the rectangle tool. We've got the ellipse tool, again gives us an oval. If I hold shift, it gives us a circle. So the shift is preserving the proportion. Okay, and same with the rectangle. If I hold shift, I get a square. If I don't hold shift, I get a rectangle, or the ability to kind of make it however I want. Okay, let's get rid of these guys. Click and drag, select all, and hit delete. Back to the tool. So we've got rectangle. We know we can make rectangles. We know we can hold shift to make squares. We know that we can isolate individual corners and edit them, or the whole shape. And that shift will keep us all in proportion. All the same things for rounded rectangle, but just with edges. And again, the ellipse, if we hold the shift, we get a circle. Now, polygon. Polygon tool is going to give you a 6-sided object by default. If, as you're making your object, you click the up arrow key on your keyboard, you can increase the number of sides that you get with your polygon. Okay, all the way up to where it's like difficult to even tell, it would just turn into a circle. Now, if I go back down, let's go back down to 6, and that's our starting point. But if I go further down, I can go as far as a triangle. Okay, and a triangle falls into the category of polygon. A triangle, a square, a pentagon, a hexagon, and I'm bad at all the names, but you can have all those number of sided objects as your polygon tool. But by default, it's a 6-sided polygon. Okay, so with that being said, we can make our polygon and we can add additional add additional sides to it. We can do edits. We can distort it just like we can with all the other things that we've talked about related to the rectangle. Okay, so there's an example of that. Also notice that when you're on Black Arrow, you get these little handlebars on the corners. So I can do some twisting here. Something we haven't talked about yet is not only does Shift preserve proportion, Shift can lock us into place. So this object is starting out off, let's see, off and not straight. Let's make it straight, okay? Looks pretty close. Let's make it real straight. And we can see that's at a 90-degree angle. But this looks visually straight. Now, if I hold Shift and I do this, I'm going to get these perfect intervals. So like there's a perfect vertical and then a 45-degree and then back over to straight across. Okay, so here we go with this shape. Again, you can increase sides, decrease sides, you can edit it, and you still have the ability to do live corners. So you know what? That's a pretty good start to a cool logo right there. Moving on though, let's set this guy aside for a minute, come back over here to under the shape tool. Let's go down to star. Now this one can get a little crazy, so pay attention to the star. We're going to click and drag star, and already I am not on my default star. Let's go back to 5 points. Okay, your default star should look something like this. And I may need to actually go back and try to reset my star, but your default star should be a 5-point star. When you're clicking on the star, you should be able to, and I'm still not getting it. You should be able to hold Alt and get, let's see, you should be able to hold Alt and determine the length of your points, okay? So if we hold Alt, if we hold, let's see, let's go back to, there's our original star. If I hold the star and I click Command, rather, not Alt, okay, Command, I can lengthen the tips of my star. I can lengthen the points of my star. Remember, Command Z will take all this back. Now, not only can I lengthen the points of my star, I can change the number of the points of the star. Let's try to get this back to default. Okay, and that should go back to default. Okay, this is the default star. We've got 5 points, and they're somewhat rounded, and that is the actual default way. If I click Alt, it slims the star down. If I let go of Alt, it makes the star more chubby. Okay, I can now increase, I'm holding down Alt to keep it like that, and I'm going to increase my number of points with the arrow key. Okay, now then we take away Alt, and you see how you get more of a chubby filled in like starburst. So the more up arrows I do, the more points I get. If I go down arrow, I get less points. I can go back, and I can go as far as a triangle again. Okay, and again, Alt would like slim that up, and letting go of Alt would then make it kind of more full. Okay, so back to star, and now I've got to add our points back in. Okay, there's our 5-point star, and that's more of a traditional 5-point star. So there's a lot of options there. You're using Alt to make it thin or thick. You're using Command to make it points longer or shorter. And you're using up arrows and down arrows to increase the number of points. So there's a lot of options there just in that shape. Okay, so that's the star tool. If we come over here, let's go to the flare tool. And I'm going to use this we're going to bring this rounded rectangle back in. Let's go back to the flare. Okay, I'm going to put a flare here. Now, initially that looks like kind of a jumbled mess. It's a vector, so we're seeing the points and all the data that's there. But once I click off of that, you can see that what it is a pinpoint of light. And so this comes into play when you want to have kind of like this appearance of light or a camera flash, something with sunlight. There's just all kinds of things that you could do with this. And it really makes an interesting effect. Okay, so this is, let's get rid of one of those and let's just make them lined up. This is a really interesting thing that you can add to your work. and it is a vector. Even though it looks like very much like a raster, it is a vector. Remember, rasters are images that cannot be sized up and down very well, that they're made that the size that they are, and yet these are vectors. Illustrator makes vectors where it can be sized really big or really small and it doesn't lose its quality. So I'm going to go Command 0 and back to the middle here. This looks like maybe an alien with his eyes. Okay? Okay, so we've got all the tools under the rectangle tool that we've talked about. We've got the selection arrows that we've talked about. We've got, we have talked about a couple of things, but let's move on to the opacity or the transparency panel, okay? So we're going to pull that out, break that out here, and let's look at that. Let's change our color and get something a little bit different. Blue's fine. Let's make, let's do some circles. Okay, there's a blue circle. Let's make another blue circle. And let's make another blue circle, something like that. So we're going to make this first, we'll leave this first one blue. Actually, let's change that blue to more of a royal blue. And we're going to take this one and we're going to change it to, let's do a yellow. And we're going to take this one and we're going to change it to red. So we are using our primary colors, okay? And we can see that we've got our primary colors all lined up here. Primary meaning red, yellow, and blue make other colors. So let's see what we get when we change the transparency. So if the transparency on the red was dropped down to, this is a panel, and it is from the Windows panel over here, transparency, and I've added it to over here on my toolbar. So let's say red drops down to 75. Let's just see, let's leave them all at 75 and see what we get. Yellow at 75, and let's do blue at 75. Okay, now when these cross over, we get some color mixing, and some are better than others. Let's bring this one forward. Let's go object, transform, or excuse me, object arrange, bring forward. So it's going to bring it in forward. Let's put the red all the way in the front, unless it already is. Bring to front. Okay. And so we're getting some crossover here. Yellow and blue should make green. We're really not getting a green there. We are definitely getting an orange here where red and yellow cross over. And we're getting sort of a purple here. I wonder if we have maybe not quite the right blue for this experiment. Definitely seeing purple-like things here, but not sure. Let's see if there's maybe more purple there. Still not really getting that green, but definitely getting that orange. But just by using this panel, you can see how you would lay shapes over top of each other and you would get this combination of colors, or how that could play into a design. Okay, so this is the transparency panel. It's done by percentages. Okay, so over here it's done by percentages, and you slide this. You can also just type the number in there and change it, and we're definitely getting more purple right there. Maybe I just need to drop this down more to 50, and yeah, still not really getting that green that I was intending, but you get the idea of how that works. Transparency panel. Now we will talk more in the future about a mask, making masks, but this right now is what I want you to understand: the opacity of an object. So opacity means you cannot see through something, or excuse me, opaque means that you cannot see through something, and the level of opacity is how much you can see through it. The actual word for completely see-through is transparent, like a window. Translucent is partially you can see through it, like stained glass, where maybe you see light coming through, but you see no information or details. And opaque is you can't see through it at all. So when we adjust the level of opacity, we are making these either see-through or not see-through, and to what degree, and that's all based on a percentage. Okay, so just so you understand, these are our rectangle, or excuse me, all of our tools, our shapes under here. And again, that's quick key M. If you're jumping down to the ellipse tool, it's quick key L. and then we've talked about our opacity. So I hope you've enjoyed this information and found it useful. And until next time, thank you.